Hey there, and welcome to this video about side hops. We've all failed setups because we moved before a side hop, or we moved between side hops, or even we were trying to input a side hop and something went awfully wrong about it. Now, there are ways to give you the most leniency possible during these things so that you have the most chances of success. These information have been provided to me by Cadmic. Cadmic made a wonderful document, but it is very difficult to digest. So my goal here is to make it as understandable as possible so that you can understand why you should be doing this or that in this or that situation. Let's get into it. It's a little abstract for now, but it will make a lot of sense and be very simple at the end. Let's start with flatground. So my goal here is to input a side hop without moving. So I have a watch on screen, on the middle of the screen close to Link's head. That is my speeds. What we want to see is, for example, if I hold full right, when is it that I'm gonna start moving? So I'm holding full right and I'm passing one frame. I'm still on 0. One of the watches on screen has changed, which is Link's current action. When you change Link's current action, it does not always update speed, but that means the game knows that I'm holding full right and that my action is going to change. Now, if we go one frame further, now we have a speed. So what does that mean? That means I can hold full right, input A, and that's a side hop. That's a side hop without moving before. Okay, that was full input and A on same frame. Pretty hard to do consistently. But if I hold full right and I input A on the next frame, I'm still at 0 speed. I still don't have a speed associated to my action, so I can still side hop reliably without moving. Let's recap. I can press A on the same frame as I go full input, and I can press A one frame after I go full input. We have those 2 frames that are available for us to perform a side hop without moving before. What if I go more? Well, I go 1, 2, and then I get a speed associated. So I've been moving before performing my side hop, and if I have a precise setup, then it may very well not work anymore. So we have those 2 frames of leniency. The reason for which we have those 2 frames is because when you switch Link's action, it does not always update the speed, and we're going to take advantage of that as much as we can. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. So let's start by seeing another scenario in which we're not managing to go full input before the console asks my controller where my joystick is. Let's say while I was traveling from the neutral joystick position to the full input, then the console has been asking me where my joystick is, and my joystick was around 30, which is not enough to perform a side hop. So let's say I have a frame at 30 and then I go full input, so I could obviously input a side hop here because I'm still on 0. Let's go one frame further and I can still input a side hop without having moved before. If I had gone one frame further, we get back to the same situation as before. We will have 2 speeds. Let's show that. So I'm going to be holding 30-ish, 1 frame of full input. I go past it. Can I go one more? No, I get a speed associated. So that is the very basic of side hopping on flat ground from a neutral position with no prior speed and without holding shield. So what happens if I start holding shield? Well, we're going to look at a watch that is on screen and we're going to see that something very awkward happens when I hold shield. It makes one watch move. So I'm going to pause. And as you can see, this watch is like gaining 1.5 units of God knows what every frame. And this is moving. Is that an issue for us? Right now, it doesn't seem to be an issue. That does not make me move. All right. So let's see if our side hops still work the same way when I hold shield. We'll start with the full input example. I'm holding full input. Obviously, I could press A right now. My speed is still 0. But is my speed on next frame still 0? Yes. My speed on next frame is still 0. Do I get one more frame because I'm holding shield? Let's go to the next frame. No. I do not get one more frame for holding shield before doing my side hop. I was just standing still. I'm holding shields. I get the same thing if I'm on full input. Now you see it coming. Now, what happens if there's a frame that I'm holding, you know, that little in between, that little unlucky pole? Just look. Okay, so what exactly is going on here? This is due to the running cycle of Link. It's this little animation that you see here. If I were running, it would also have this. So this is what we call the running cycle. And the running cycle is, I don't know if this was intentional, trying to mimic the fact that Link is jumping. You know how he's jumping? And it feels like the devs wanted to make it so that if you're in the air, you're moving, and if you're landed, you're not moving with those small inputs. That's kind of the idea you want to get from that. And the big issue with this is that if you are in the wrong range of inputs, then inputting something like 30 will move you in one frame. You see how I just passed one frame with holding 30 and I already get assigned a speed. So that means I have moved. So it means that holding shields gives an opportunity for failure. It gives an opportunity for failure if you have had what we will call an unlucky pull. So the console has asked my joystick, where are you? While I was traveling from neutral to the full input. And if I was holding shield and if I was in the wrong moment of the running cycle, I will get moved. So the conclusion for flatground is that if you are starting from what I would call a neutral stance, you don't have speed, you're not moving before, and you want to initiate a side hop from this, then you should not be holding shield. You're so wrong, dude. Look, I'm standing still. I'm at the exact same place as you, but look, I hold left. I could input a side hop right now. I'm at 0 speed. One frame. I go to the next one. I'm still at 0 speed. That's my second frame. I go one more. I'm still at 0 speed. So I have 3 frames for side hops. Why is it that you tell people that you have 2 frames? But there's also something I don't get, is that if I hold right, then I can input a side hop right now, and on the next frame I can also input it, but then it becomes the same as in your video. So why is it that we have seen this example of having 3 frames for side hop to the left, but only 2 to the right? The thing that has changed in this example is where we're facing. This time we're looking at the graveyard. How would that be any different? Well, the thing that changed, you can see it on screen. It's on one of those watches out there. Those watches are Link's facing angle and the camera angle. On my previous example, I made them equal so that when I'm holding left or right, it is perfectly 90 degrees away from Link. It's not more and it's not less. Now, in this example, there is this little 1. You see C000 and then C001. So it means that there's a slight misalignment between Link's facing angle and the camera angle, which means that when I hold left, I'm actually more than 90 degrees away from Link's facing angle because my controller gives input relative to the camera. Now, if I'm more than 90 degrees away, then I get that extra frame. That's what you want to know. It's not really something you will be able to use very nicely, but let's imagine you're holding slightly lower than full rate. Then I could side hop on this frame, I could side hop on this frame, and I could also side hop on this frame. All of these have 0 speeds, so that means with this, I could potentially get 3 frames for side hop. If you're creative, maybe you can find a way to use that. We will still mostly say that side hops from standstill are a 2-frame window. Now that we're done explaining what happens on flat ground, let's start tackling what happens on slopes, right? You probably have experienced it before, either with side hops or with backflips. You you're on a slope and you either get something like this happening or you get something like this happening, and it's infuriating. So why does that happen? And you'll probably tell me like, oh, it's because I had an unlucky pull and that generated ESS, right? And that's what gives me this shuffle. The issue I have with this is when I target, ESS does not exist. The definition of ESS is Link is turning and I have 0 speeds. So there's actually like a control stick input that gives me 0 speeds while it still is outside of the dead zone, right? If I'm untargeted, then there's 20 inputs after the end of the game's dead zone. Game's dead zone is like 7. And then there's going to be 20 inputs that are going to give me that result, which we all call ESS. If I target, the game is actually not using the same curves to map my speed to what my joystick is doing. And if you can see, there's no such input when I am targeted. There's no input that gives me 0 speed, which means when I target, ESS does not exist. So why is it? How is it that ESS suddenly exists when I'm on slopes? And to understand this, we need to talk about pitch. Pitch is the only watch on screen that stays at 0 and has been staying at 0 all this time. And look, I'm gonna go down this slope and it changed, and now I go down this and it changes. So how does pitch impact my inputs? The way that pitch is going to impact my input is gonna take the curve that maps my speed to my inputs and it's going to make it fall down. And what happens when it falls down? It means that the first few values will now be mapped to 0 when it wasn't possible on flat ground. Slopes make ESS exist while you're targeted. Naturally, our next question is going to be, how can I manipulate pitch to my advantage? Ideally, if I'm going to start side hopping, then I would love that my pitch is 0. Because then my inputs are not squashed down and then there's not that many inputs that are going to be unlucky pulls that could make me shuffle and make all the things go wrong. So how do we manipulate pitch? We need to understand a few things about pitch. So pitch is calculated in front of Link. So if I'm climbing this, then I get 12E4 because I'm climbing it at 90 degrees. And if we go on the way down, then we get that other value. Now, what if I'm side hopping? So I'm side hopping onto the slope and I'm getting that 12E4. That's the pitch I currently have. Cadmic is saying that you have a stored side roll. You just side hopped and the slope is calculated to the side because that's where you are going. Same goes if I go for a backflip like this. You see that the slope is calculated behind me. So my movement also defines how my pitch is calculated. Now, a very interesting thing to be aware of is that when I side hop on a slope and I have a pitch like that, if I release target, see how my pitch went to 0? What would I do in terms of a stored side roll? This is also the way that we make sure that what we get next is a dry roll and not a side roll. So does shield do the same? It does. So that is one way to recalculate pitch in front of Link rather than because of your previous movement. Just to make things perfectly clear, let's do again the classic fail of side hop on slopes. Let's show the inputs. So you're targeting and you have a pitch that makes ESS exist while targeted. And now if I'm around 20, that is mapped to 0 speed. So I'm going to spend 1 frame here as if I got an unlucky pull. And on the next frame, I'm holding full right. And this gives me that really awkward flick. I didn't release target and still Link is looking completely to the right. If you are familiar with shuffle hovers, other weird backflipping, then you might know that this is due to canceling the little crab shuffle dance that Link does. I'm going to show it to you right now. it's because of canceling this. And when you cancel in this, you get a very strong flick in 1 frame. If I hold down, it's gonna give me either a down right or a down left angle. That is the reason why when I have this and then I press A, that would be within your 2 frames of inputting a side hop. Well, you will get that roll. Why is it a roll? You were holding in a direction that Link was facing and you pressed A, so the game just does a roll. That's what it's supposed to be. That is what is happening. It's canceling a shuffle with an input that is no longer mapped to 0 speed, will give you a flick, like an immediate Link's flick, no matter the fact that you're still holding target. That is what is happening when side hops go wrong on slopes. Now, how do we prevent that? If and only if your setup is not too precise, then you could use shield to prevent the Krabby Crab shuffle from ever happening. It will not happen, so you won't be able to flick, and that's a good way to remove the mistake. But once again, if you're in the wrong phase of the running cycle, we get back to the same consequence as we saw before, which means you could get moved in 1 frame. If your setup's not too precise, let's take a quick example. There's a Bolero skip setup that uses side hops with the timer. You could be fine with holding the shield to prevent not getting a side hop. If you want to do this on a precise setup, it's kind of a gambling route. You have around a 60% chance of being in the wrong running cycle, and then you have probabilities that I don't know about to get an unlucky pull. If you're fine with those, that is your decision to make. There is a 100% guaranteed way to side hop on slopes without ever getting a shuffle, and that's what we're seeing next. What is usually recommended is to do a long side hop. Let's call it like that. So I'm taking long from long roll. You guys probably done long rolls before. You hold shield so that you're crouched, and then you're gonna press target and A, which means once you press A, you are already on full input. You have your full input before. There's no chances that what you're holding will be mapped to 0 speed. You can do the same with side hops, and this actually gives you a ton of frames to press A. Why is that? This is because of Link's current action. Right now, Link is shielding. When I press target, Link is gonna start standing, but it's no longer having the shield up. So it's gonna have to reshield, which is gonna change the action. And then it's gonna be standing with shield and target. So we're kind of piling up Link's action that do not update his speed while having a full input. So that is the safest thing you could do when you have a really evil pitch, is to go for a long side hop. And I'm giving a reminder, we're talking in the case of starting from standstill. If we're chaining side hops, this is going to be different. So let's go over what happens if I want to chain multiple side hops. Let's say only 2, and we'll get the main idea. So we're going to start from a side hop, and I'm going to put a safe state here, and let's see what happens. First thing you could be doing is landing and then inputting another one. That means the same as if you didn't chain. This is a side hop from standstill. The interesting thing comes in when we still hold fully to the right during the whole stuff, and we just try to time our A press. I don't want to hear about mashing. So we're trying to time our A presses. How many frames do we have? All right, so this is the first frame that I could be inputting A. As you can see, I still have that little 7.5 speeds. That is just the end of the side hop movement, and that basically means I haven't moved. So this is the frame perfect side hop frame. It's the first frame that I'm on the ground. Next frame, I'm at 0 speed, so I could still input side hop, and I have not yet moved. So far, we got 2 frames. What goes up on the next one? I get assigned a speed, so we have 2 frames to input A between side hops. If we're not holding shields. All right. This is another case of we're gonna pile up actions that do not update Link's speed, and shield is going to help us here. We hold shield after the start of the first side hop because we started it without. We hold shield during that side hop. We land. The shield is on our back. So we have to start holding it. That's our second frame of potential side hop. And now I get an extra frame that I could side hop on. Let's go one more and we get assigned a speed. So the result of this is if you are chaining multiple side hops and your goal is to keep full input so that there's no chance of other unlucky pulls happening, then holding shields is going to give you an extra frame, and that's going to be a total of 3 frames. It doesn't matter if you're on a slope or if you're on flat ground because you're already holding full input. So when you're chaining side hops, you should be using shields. If it's the first side hop you do, you should not use shields. And if you're starting in a weird slope, then you either get lucky or you start from crouch and you play it safe. That's basically it. There's actually a ton more. You can go read Cadmic's document. It is fantastic. It regroups research of many years of OT, speedrun researchers. It probably has decomp knowledge. I have no idea of all of this. I'm just here to try to make it simple in a video so that we all understand what it means. I hope you guys enjoy that information, and we are all going to have such a nice shield hygiene during our side hops now. It's going to be beautiful. I'll see you guys next time. Ciao, ciao.